Good afternoon and welcome to the EBPA webinar, How Can Crowdfunding Platforms Unlock Follow-on Funding? This is the second webinar of the webinar series Crowdfunding for Impact that we have launched after releasing our new report on the role of crowdfunding platforms in the impact ecosystem. Today, we will be seeing the case of the Spanish crowdfunding platform Bolsa Social and how they have been setting up an impact fund, a crowd equity platform, and crowd lending platform, and how these vehicles are complementing each other. So I am very pleased to have in our panel Francesca Passeri, who is Deputy Director at the European Crowdfunding Network. She works for the European Crowdfunding Network since 2016, where she's responsible for advocacy and strategic development, and she's also a member of the board. Before, Francesca had worked for the Emilia-Romagna delegation to the European Union. We also have here José Moncada, who is founder and CEO of Bolsa Social and also in the lead of the Impact Fund. And before setting Bolsa Social, José had been working in financial policy at the Public Treasury in Madrid, in the European Commission, and also in the European Securities and Markets Authority in Paris. We also have here Daniel Calzolari, who is crowd equity lead at Bolsa Social. He has more than 10 years experience in renewable energies, aerospace and media, having worked for various multinational and also startup companies. And finally, we also have Eduardo Bellosillo, who is crowd lending lead at Bolsa Social and has 15 years experience in corporate banking. However, for the last 5 years, he's been working as commercial manager for fintech companies, both for long-term and also short-term financing. I am Arma Picon. I am research associate at EBPA, and I have been working in this project on crowdfunding and investing for impact together with my colleagues Alessia Zancelli and Peter Cafferty. So today I will introduce you very briefly to this new report that we have launched at EBPA, and then Francesca will tell us a little bit more about the crowdfunding sector and how it's been evolving during the years. And then we will go to the case of Bolsa Social. So first, José will tell us a little bit more of the organization, Bolsa Social, and then we will have a brief introduction to the three vehicles. So first, we will start with the equity-based crowdfunding platform with Daniele. Then José will tell us a bit more on the impact fund from the Bolsa Social, and then Eduardo will tell us more about the crowd lending platform. We'll have some Q&A, and then I will close the webinar. Before starting, some tips and tricks. So throughout the session, you should be able to open and hide the panel. That is this console that appears on the right hand of your screen. As mentioned, we will have 10 minutes for the Q&A session. So if at any point during the webinar you have a question that you would like to address to the speakers, do not hesitate to write it down, and then we will then save it for the Q&A session and share it with our speakers. Since we have a lot of participants today, we are keeping everyone muted, and the session is being recorded. So as of next week, we should be able to watch both the session and also the slides on EBPA's website. Finally, if you have any technical issue during the webinar, please send an email to our colleague Gianluca Gaggiotti at ggaggiotti@ebpa.eu.com. Since this is, again, the second webinar of this series, I will not go in depth into introducing this publication, only mentioning that it's a publication that describes what are impact crowdfunding platforms and how are they addressing the SDG financing gap. And it looks at the role of these crowdfunding platforms in the sector, describing what opportunities are they bringing to other investors for impact, and what are also the challenges that they are facing and how they are overcoming these challenges, especially by collaborating with other investors for impact. So the report has a strong focus on collaboration and how crowdfunding platforms set up partnerships with impact funds, with foundations, with financial institutions, and others. And finally, the publication looks at how the impact crowdfunding sector is evolving and what is needed to strengthen it. I will not go more in depth, but my colleagues will be sharing in the chat the link to download the report. It's a short, incisive report, so we recommend you to have a look at it and to see if it's interesting for you, whether you are coming from a crowdfunding platform yourselves or for other types of capital providers, or you're interested in the sector. Again, I will not go more into depth on this, but I would like to thank the 40+ experts and practitioners from all over Europe that have been collaborating with this process, participating in group calls, participating in one-to-one interviews, providing feedback on the final drafts, of course, including the European Crowdfunding Network and also Fondo Social that have been active in this process, and we are very thankful to all the people that have been participating, because of course, without them, it wouldn't have possible. And especially thanks to Fund for Impact, that has been our partner during this process, and also to Innovate UK for the financial support. For those that do not know Fund for Impact, they have launched a platform providing grants to impactful social purpose organizations. They have launched it recently, and they are doing it in partnership of Oxford University Innovation. They have a very unique approach to tackle the SDGs and to finance projects that are tackling the SDGs with all the diversity that this entails. So we recommend you to look at their website and to investigate more about what they are doing. Our colleagues are also sharing the link to their website in the chat. And if you have more questions and you would like to know more about them, do not hesitate to contact them at hello@fundforimpact.com. Before starting, just a couple of slides to set up a little bit the scene and to make understand what we refer when we are talking about impact crowdfunding platforms. We know that in the space there are crowdfunding platforms that are providing grants or donations, but not necessarily to organizations that have impact at the core of their activities, of course, not measuring the impact, not having a highly engaged approach to help these organizations, or not really running an intense due diligence. So we don't have this type of organizations in our scope, and we also do not have this type of crowdfunding that has profit at the core and is only seeking for profitable returns. So this is a little bit out of scope. What we have investigating and what we include in our report, and also of course today, is those crowdfunding platforms that have impact at the core of their activities, whether they are grant-based, so either donations or rewards-based crowdfunding platforms, or social investment, which includes debt and also equity crowdfunding. Of course, for today, we have Fondo Social in the room, and they are providing equity and debt, so it is under this umbrella of social investment that we will be speaking in the report. But of course, we will know more the difference thanks to their experience. And in the report, we also so we start by looking at what are the different ways to complement crowdfunding with other types of capitals. Of course, the most common and the one that we have more examples about is the collaboration with different capital providers. So this involves crowdfunding platforms setting up partnerships with impact funds, with foundations, with financial institutions, and of course also with other crowdfunding platforms. The report has some examples about it, and also the previous webinar that we ran with Lita in France, it was touching upon these different ways to collaborate with other investors for impact, and it's the main focus of the EPA publication. However, today we will be more focused on this second way of complementing crowdfunding with other types of capital, which involves setting up investment vehicles, as Fondo Social did with Fondo Social, and now with a crowdlending platform. So we will know more about this side that is, let's say, less explored in the report, although of course we're mentioning it. But before going into that, I would just to highlight that of course these approaches are not mutually exclusive. So of course, Fondo Social is also collaborating with other types of capital providers, as they will show us later, and they collaborate with the impact funds and foundations in Spain and also all over Europe. So of course, this one thing doesn't exclude the other. Having said that, we will start the webinar with our speakers and go to the case of Fondo Social. But before, I would like to introduce Francesca, who will tell us a little bit more on the market growth of the sector. So Francesca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arnau, for the invitation. As usual, I think it's a great effort that you're doing in mapping and interacting with the crowdfunding sector. As I said in the previous webinar, this report is absolutely relevant for the industry. It highlights how combination between different finance sectors could happen and what benefits they could bring. So I will not take away too much time, because I think it's more interesting to listen to the practical case study of Fondo Social. Just to give you a bit of an introduction on the crowdfunding market and to set some guidelines on what we are talking about when we speak about crowdfunding. This is basically the definition of crowdfunding, and it entails a revolution if you read through it, a revolution in the world of finance, since we see that crowdfunding is defined as the practice of funding a project or a venture by raising many small amounts of money from a large number of people. And this is possible, of course, thanks to the internet and to the diffusion of internet access throughout the world. So how is this a revolution? In the first place, the first element of difference with other sources of finance or capital providers is the fact that crowdfunding entails an open call to raise funds for one specific project. And potentially anyone with an access to the internet and some liquidity could actually contribute and invest through crowdfunding. So this is absolutely new, especially if we think that the amounts that can be invested through crowdfunding can go from very, very small tickets. We're speaking about 100 or even 50 euro up to higher amounts. So not only it's a democratic mechanism because it provides access to anyone with an internet connection, but also because it enables anyone that has even a small capital to start investing. So this happens, of course, through an internet-based mechanism, which is typically a crowdfunding platform that matches. It acts as some sort of marketplace between those that are seeking to raise funds, the companies, SMEs, startups, but also associations, and those that are willing to provide capital, so the crowd. There are different crowdfunding models, of course. We are now discussing investment, of course, or financial instruments, but there are also non-financial crowdfunding models, typically crowdfunding in donation or reward base, which might even not foresee any tangible benefit in return, as in the case of donation. So there is an intrinsic flexibility in this mechanism, which has led to the development of many, many different forms of cooperation, as we will see today. In the next slide, I just want to highlight a bit what the relevance of the market has been in the last years. So you see here in the upper part of the slide a graph highlighting how the market has evolved in terms of volumes, including the UK, who's still the leading market in Europe for crowdfunding. And in the lower part of the graph, you see that we have, or actually the Cambridge Centre for Alternative Finance has cleaned the data from the UK market, so we could actually map what is happening in continental Europe. So when we look at both graphs, the first thing that comes out is that, of course, the UK remains the market leader. It's sufficient to look at the absolute volumes per year, but we see that the trend is more or less the same in both cases. So we have a growing crowdfunding sector, both when we look at the UK, but also when we look only at continental Europe. And this is a positive trend because it means that also in continental Europe, without the market the market leader, we're witnessing an increase in trust, in growth for the crowdfunding mechanism. When we look at 2020, we see that there is, of course, an impact, and it's mainly due to COVID. But as a disclaimer, if you go through the Cambridge report, which is where this data is taken from, they also state that the decrease in data collected for 2020 is also due to the fact that they had less evidence from less participants. So there was, of course, a decrease in volumes in 2020, but this is not necessarily all due to the impact of COVID. It's also due to the fact that less evidence was collected from less participating platforms. On a positive note, something that you cannot see from this graph, but that it's important to highlight, is that market growth is also due and closely linked to the increase in institutionalization rates. And we will now look at what institutionalization means for crowdfunding. But just keep it in mind, it's a sort of cooperation between crowdfunding platforms and other types of capital providers. So we see that in Europe, this practice, this synergy between different actors and crowdfunding is picking up the pace, and this is also an element that contributes naturally to the growth of the sector. If we then look at the success rate per model, a bit of a breakdown just to give you an idea, we see that, of course, donation and reward-based crowdfunding have around success rates that range from 66 to 69%. That is 2 out of 3 projects are successfully funded. When we move to lending and equity, we go to a success rate that ranges from 81 to 83%. So that is 4 out of 5 projects. So it's even higher chances of getting funded. In the next slide, I just want to give you a brief overview about what institutionalization is and what it means. So the definition of this term states that basically what we're looking at when we say that the market is becoming more institutionalized is we're looking at how much of the funding volume that passes through platform and goes into final beneficiaries, that is startups or SMEs, is actually coming from institutional investors. That could be business angels, venture capital funds, investment funds, banks. And so this is what the institutionalization rate maps. And this is why we see that this is a significant element when we speak of growth of the sector. So this, if we look at models, so how much each model is institutionalized, we see that in the lending crowdfunding sphere, we reached an average of 89% in terms of participation from institutional investors. And this increase can be traced back to the growing involvement of governments who have set up SME support schemes. And in many, many cases, these SME support schemes have been in partnership with crowdfunding platforms, lending crowdfunding platforms. If we then look at reward, who's also witnessed a significant increase since 2019, this increase can be traced back to corporate social responsibility initiatives. So we see that both in the spectrum of financial instruments or financial products and non-financial crowdfunding, there is a growing interest from other actors that move in the finance landscape. When we look at countries, we see that Italy has reported the highest rate of institutionalization at the 93%. That means that most of the crowdfunding actors are actually in partnership, and most of the funds that are moved by crowdfunding platforms are actually combined with other types of investors. And then we have Ireland, the Iberian Peninsula, UK, and France. These are all high institutionalization rates, and this is why I thought it was relevant to give you this overview, also in light of what will be presented in the practical case study. We have actually mapped the same trends by looking at matchfunding schemes. So schemes in which crowdfunding was combined with other types of resources. We've published a report just a few weeks back that would focus mainly on public resources. And so we have seen that, of course, there are many schemes that can be activated in partnership with public authorities, foundations, all these other financial intermediaries, investment funds, and so on. And these partnerships focus mainly on the sectors that you see on the right-hand side of the slide. So it's social innovation, renewable energies, culture and creativity, circular economy. It's a very wide range of sectors that are embraced by this type of schemes. When we look a bit more into the report, in the next slide, we see that we have been able to map 22 initiatives, 22 case studies coming from 8 European countries. And we look at grant-on-grant combinations, so those partnerships that focus on non-financial schemes, but we also look at financial schemes. So we focus on how the setup of a match funding scheme with an equity crowdfunding platform or with a lending crowdfunding platform could actually be designed and implemented for public authorities. But of course, the aim is to highlight how this could be replicable for all other interested parties. You, of course, have the opportunity to download the report on our website. And of course, we can also discuss it in further detail. But this is more or less the overview that I wanted to give you today. So just to kind of come to a conclusion, I haven't introduced the network itself. For those that were already here last time, sorry about this duplication. For those that weren't, we are a not-for-profit organization. We represent the crowdfunding sector in Europe. The objective that we have is to, of course, represent the industry, but also innovate, promote best practices, protect the European crowdfunding industry, and position it as a key element for final beneficiaries. So key element for access to finance. At the moment, we, in the next slide, you will see that we are 10 staff members covering directly through our membership base 16 European countries and 3 non-European countries. We have 2 strategic groups set up that focus more on the national context. In Italy and in Spain, we're already planning to expand also to other markets. And we organize each year 2 annual conferences. One that has just happened a few weeks back, where we presented the Scaling Up Partnership Report, was the CrowdCamp, focusing on match funding practices. And another one that will come up at the end of the year, which is CrowdCon, and that will focus more on the key topics for the industry. Namely, this year will be the implementation of the European crowdfunding service provider regulation. So, of course, I say it now, it's July, it will happen around October or November. I will send out an invitation. You're all invited to CrowdCon. This is more or less what we do. We're a Brussels-based organization. We do, of course, the usual policy activities. So we try to keep an open dialogue with European institutions, but also with fellow trade bodies and associations, as is the case of EVPA, of which we're very, very happy. We also develop training, because we couldn't do policy activities without training both policymakers, but also final beneficiaries, so public authorities, other intermediaries, SMEs and associations. And we couldn't do any training without research. We base our research on our own topics. We do research projects for the European Commission, and we also work for private entities that might want to focus on specific areas. And finally, the 4th pillar of activity of Eurocrowd is conduct. So we focus, as I was saying, on promoting best practices, transparency and fairness within the crowdfunding industry. And we have implemented a code of conduct that sets some standards for our members in order to become actual members of the European Crowdfunding Network, and so that we can actually enforce the promotion of these criteria. So thank you, everyone. I wish you all a good continuation of this meeting, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, Francesca. It's been great presentation as always, and of course, again, thank you for the support and the collaboration of DCN throughout the research process on crowdfunding and investing for impact, but also for participating in this series of webinars. So now we will go ahead presenting the case of Bolsa Social. So I would like to welcome Jose, who will present a little bit what is their case.
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Arnau, and thank you very much to the EVPA for inviting Bolsa Social to share our case with you. It is a pleasure to be here, and so what we are going to do is just go very quickly through the history of Bolsa Social. What are we doing? What have we done? And what do we want to do in order to support social enterprises in the different stages of development? Bolsa Social started in 2015 as an equity crowdfunding platform. It was built as a community of social enterprises and impact investors to focus on the stage of development of the company, the social enterprises, which is the one that is less served in terms of finance, which is the early stages. We know that there is a big problem in terms of channeling funds to social enterprises that are in the seed stage. And precisely that is a problem, because this is where the innovation lies, where the new models, disruptive models, are starting, are created. And some of them, because due to the lack of access to finance, cannot develop all the impact that they want to produce, that they could produce, and therefore there's a big market failure. So that's why we created Bolsa Social in 2015 as an equity crowdfunding platform. It was, in fact, the first in Spain to be authorized under the Comisión Nacional del Mercado de Valores, which is our national securities market supervisor. So from the beginning, from the outset, we wanted to make sure that we were presenting to the people an opportunity to invest in these early stage social enterprises, in the capital of these early stage social enterprises, in a robust, rigorous, and professional manner. That's why we counted from the beginning with the authorization. Basically, since then, we have managed to create a community of more than 7,000 people that have channeled more than 5 million euros into 25 social enterprises in different fields, in sustainable agriculture, and access to education, access to water, sustainable fashion, sustainable construction, also care of the elder, care of the people with disabilities, social innovation, and many other sectors. And we are happy because the two first companies that we financed are not only, all of the companies are not only producing a big impact, but they're also, they already provided a good return for our investors of above 40% IRR. All of our investments are aligned with the SDGs, of course, focused on 5 areas: well-being and health, access to quality education, sustainable production and consumption, action for the climate, and social integration and development. If we go to the next slide, you could see that we have developed this in a cooperative way, of course, because we are a crowdfunding platform, and by definition, we are participative. We make alliances. So we are very proud of being members of EBPA. I don't know, I think we were the first equity crowdfunding platform to be member of the EBPA back in 2015, probably. But we are also a member of a couple of Spanish associations, of the Spanish Venture Capital Association, and also the Spanish FinTech Association. And we work in collaboration with Triodos Bank that has supported us from the beginning in the development of Bolsa Social. In fact, they are providing the payment services of Bolsa Social nowadays, and we are strengthening our collaboration with them. We're very happy to have them in supporting us. Also, AFI, with which we have launched the Impact Investing Fund that we will speak about later, Fundación Biodiversidad, Impact Hub, and we have co-invested through the platform with a number of impact investors that are presented there, all of them quite relevant in Spain. And also we launch calls with other actors like Capsa Food, Soria Futuro, in order to find and fund social enterprises. In the next slide, we can show how you can see how we wanted to provide support for the different for the social enterprises in the different stages of development. If we can move to the next slide, yeah. So at the early stage, as I mentioned, we have the crowd equity platform, where companies are in the need of seed capital from angels, and that's what we do. We put the strength of the community, of the collectivity, to support companies in that very early stage with the crowd equity. Then in the next phase, also in a seed stage, but when the companies have already demonstrated some capacity and projection, and they are able to demonstrate scalability, we have launched a fund together with AFI, the management company of AFI, Analistas Financieros Internacionales, which is a very well-known financial advisory firm in Spain, of 21 million euros that is investing in early stage social enterprises, seed and pre-series A, in order to help them to develop to the next stage. Also, we have developed a service of what we call it impact consultancy, impact M&A, where we help companies to look for investors beyond the platform for bigger investment rounds. And we are now developing the crowd lending line for companies that are more established and are able to return a loan, and about which Eduardo will tell us later. And we have the plan to study at least the possibility of creating a secondary market for social finance in Spain and in Europe. But this is something that's an initiative for the future. Basically, moving to the next slide, we can see a case of Nostoc. Nostoc Biotech was a company. It's a company that develops biofertilizers and bioprotectors for the crops, helping to reduce the use of chemicals in the agriculture, which is a big problem, environmental and social and health problem. And basically, they came to us to the platform. They were created in 2014. They came to us to the platform in 2015. They were just starting. We launched around an investment round, an equity investment round in the platform of 250,000 euros. 250,000. That was a success, and they have grown since then. And we, in the next phase of development, the fund, the Bolsa Social Impact Fund, invested in Nostoc in a further round, led a round of 1.5 million euros, together with other impact investors. So this shows how well we can, using crowdfunding together with a fund, can help accompany companies in the different stages of development. Finally, in the last slide of this first part, I can show you the team of Bolsa Social, a very talented, committed, and professional team of very handsome people. As you can see, that is the criteria basically when we look for people, is that they are handsome and professional. And this is it, at least for my part. I think now I will pass to Daniele, which is the leader of the crowd equity part of the Bolsa Social, to present this part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose, for this introduction, for all your compliments about the team. Indeed, my name is Daniele Calzolari, and I joined Jose in La Bolsa Social a little bit longer than 3 years ago. So more than half of the life of Bolsa Social, and many things have changed since then. Also, and especially in the ecosystem where we move into. And I thought, in order to give you a better insight of Bolsa Social from the very inside of our machine, financing machine, I would like to guide you through the journey of the projects that enter Bolsa Social and finally get financed. So in the last 5 years activity, we met and we've been screening above more than 1,000 projects. When I say projects, I mean social impact startups, small and medium enterprises, and their entrepreneurs, of course. We would like to stress that our selection process is strict. So we go into detail. We do almost analysis of some venture capital funds, and we do it from a business point of view, but we also do it from a social impact point of view. The importance for doing this for us is to provide the highest quality to our investors community, and also feedback, of course, to the entrepreneurs. We approve the operations analyzed with our selection committee, which is made of internal and external experts, veterans, or professionals who can support this process with experience. And then we proceed towards publication of the equity campaigns. This preparation includes, of course, setting up the project on the platform, taping a video, and also going through certain bureaucratic passages required by law, by CNMV, the regulator here in Spain. And then the campaigns last approximately 2 months. I say approximately because some last less, because they get financed relatively quick. And of the 30 campaigns we've been published, 25 got successfully financed. And in fact, let me add this quick vanity metrics. In the last 3 years, everything we publish have been financed. Analyzing this data, we believe because especially because of the selection we make on the projects. Next, please. Here is to give you an overview of the 25 projects which got financed, what we call our portfolio. And our work doesn't stop with financing them, with accompanying our investors to the investment. We also do follow up of the projects. We try to ensure that all companies report to investors in a timely way. And as you can see, it's and as also Jose explained, it's very diverse what you find here. Investing in social impact means a very broad spectrum, and which is spanning from healthcare to agriculture, education, sustainable buildings and cities, food tech, and these are the 25 operations we did. As you can see, we experienced 2 successful exits, one from Topicus, which used to be and is still a co-working space in Madrid, one of the first in fact, and Nostock, which was explained by Jose. And also we experienced some write-offs from our portfolio. What we generally say, we tried that. Okay, we believed in, we gave confidence and we gave trust to those teams. Next slide, please. I didn't tell you how we attract the projects, and we do it basically passively and actively. So we go out and look for projects. Projects also come to us. But one of the most effective ways we found and we introduced since last year is organizing thematic startup calls. Last year, during the COVID crisis at the very beginning, we were wondering strategically internally what we could do in order to bring our support, our 2 cents to the society, and we decided to do what we're good at. So scouting good companies and supporting social impact entrepreneurs. So we launched a startup called dedicated to COVID adapted solutions. So startups with a social impact with an adapted solution for the COVID. And this year we launched our second startup call dedicated to food, to the future of food, of course, with impact. In this case, in the first case, we gathered 95 companies which applied, and we financed 3 of them. And in this second case, we collaborated with Capsta. It's a very famous milk producer in the north of Spain, and we attracted 85 companies, and we selected 3 startups so far, and we are working to, as we speak, we are working to launch their crowd equity campaign. I would pass it over to my colleague Eduardo. Sorry, to Jose first.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniele, for the presentation of Bolsa Social, the platform. I'm gonna very briefly introduce to you Fondo Bolsa Social. So, as I mentioned, this is a logical development that we have created. It was in order to provide support for the social enterprise, early stage social enterprises. It was created it's a long story, but basically to put it short, in 2019, after a lot of work, we managed to create the fund together with the management company of AFI, Analistas Financieros Internacionales. As I mentioned before, AFI is a financial consultancy firm, very well known in Spain, with which we have shared values, we shared experience, and they supported us from the beginning in the construction of the platform, and that's why it was natural ally to launch this fund called Fondo Bolsa Social. This fund has nowadays 21 million euros. So we started investing. We made the first closing in March 2020, and we invested in early stage social enterprises in Spain, mainly in Spain, but we could also invest in Portugal. In the 5 fields that I mentioned before, I will go to that into a minute. And basically is addressed to institutional investors. If the platform is more for retail investors, but also there could be institutional or professional investors investing through the platform, the fund is constructed for more professional institutional investors that are willing to invest in social enterprises, but they cannot do that by putting small tickets in round by round, but rather they are willing to help to give us or to trust in us a sum of money, and we invest on their behalf on a portfolio of companies. The fund and the platform, they are separated entities. They are different entities. They have their own teams, different teams. Both of them very handsome, I can advance you. And the decision-making process is independent from both entities. So we have a very strict conflict of interest policy by which we have to separate the decisions of publishing a company in the platform on one hand, and investing in one company with the fund on the other. I am leading both initiatives, and the fund is registered with the CNMV, the Comisión Nacional del Mercado de Valores, again the Spanish Security Supervisor, as a USEF, a European Social Entrepreneurship Fund. If we can move to the next slide, I will indicate you what are the sectors in which we will invest. Basically, they are the same as I mentioned before with the platform. So basically, in health and well-being, quality and inclusive education, responsible consumption and production, climate action and social development and integration. The strategy of the fund is to focus on companies producing this impact, and we measure the impact of these companies following the EDPA guidelines on impact measurement and management, which we do as well in the platform, but adding additional elements that make even more robust our impact measurement methodology. We invest tickets. 80% of the fund is to be invested in companies with tickets between €500,000 and €1 million, and the remaining 20% we want to invest in another 10 companies with smaller tickets, more seed companies. Companies there, all of them in early stage, so seed and pre-series A, with negative EBITDA, but in clear line to reach positive EBITDA, and with high scalability and impact potential. If we move to the next slide, I can show you very quickly our portfolio. We have made 5 investments. In fact, we have just closed 2 more investments, so this should be 7 companies. We invested in Tucubi, which is technology to help to take better care of our elder at their home. Sepia is sustainable fashion. Kida, which is care for the dependents. Nostop, you already know, it's sustainable agriculture. And Cyclogreen, which is sustainable transport. It's important for you to know that since we are talking about the platform and follow-ons, in Ciclo Green and in Tucubi, these are two seed companies that we co-invested the fund and the platform. But there are other companies in which only the fund invests or only the company invests, or, which is the case of Kida, for instance, or Sepia, that were invested by the fund but not by the platform, or companies that were previously financed by the platform like Nostock, then they are later on financed by the fund, which is the case. So if we can move it to the next slide, I will prove right my expression, the idea that indeed they're different and very handsome team. Voila, this is all what I needed to say about the fund. So I will pass over to my colleague Eduardo, that will present the crowd lending line that we are developing.
Okay, thank you very much, Jose. And last but not least is the crowd lending platform. This is the last family of products that is joining the La Bolsa Social platform. And I'm going to briefly explain our proposal to help impact companies to grow. No? This is a straight line to the growth of the SMEs with the impact SMEs. No? You will see throughout all the presentation the word help. That's why, because we want to help these companies to grow, and we want to explain to you how are we going to do it. No? Who are we going to help? As you see in this slide, we are focused on companies, on SMEs. That means companies with a turnover between 1 million and 10 million turnover. We are not funding individuals. We just want to focus our help in the number of SMEs that are the wealth of a country, that are the small and medium enterprises. No? We have to check two items in these companies. They have to have a proven business model. That means they have to be in 3 years at least of commercialization of their products, with at least 250,000 million euro per year. So we ask for a minimum track record of 3 years. Then we select that it has to be impact companies in both sides. One, you can be a company that belongs to that sector, or you belong to a traditional sector but want to do impact projects in order to transform your industry in a better company in terms of social and environmental impact. No? In the next slide, you can see also how we want to help them. No? We point out 4 different aspects. First one is the products. We use the loan, as you see in the presentation, but 4 different kind of loans. No? First of all is the ordinary loan for companies that are more consolidated. We have participative loans, which is which are loans in a space between equity and loans. We have also participative loans convertible into shares of the company. That is more or less the same that the participative loans, but with another guarantee about the shares of the company. And in the end, we have also project finance loans that it's very useful for large projects that generate income from their own development. No? We are more focused on the first 2 products, ordinary loans and participative loans, in order to be tailor-made to the companies, no? To their problems. No? Second item is the analysis. At La Bolsa Social, we aim to adapt the professional analysis to SMEs to give a high-quality consultancy to SMEs in order to help to understand better their business and to give the proper solution to make them grow. Then we have flexibility. That means that our products are very good to adapt to the life of the company and to give different amortizations and different way of repayment of the loan, and also capital grace periods to better adapt to the generation of cash of the company. And in the end, we will also have the cost as a leverage of doing our business. That means that if we want to help companies, we don't have to be very expensive. We have to be average on the average of the market. That means here in Spain, for developed companies, is interest rates between 3 and 4%, and which are more for ordinary loans. And we can go scaling up to a maximum of 8% for companies with greater weakness. In both cases, we are in the lower range of prices for companies. In the next slide, you can see the advantages of the crowd lending. Why a platform? Why we use the crowd lending platform as the way to make these loans happen? Okay, again, we can see four items. First of all is the flexibility. The crowd lending doesn't depend on the single form of funding, as it can be combined with other forms of funding, such as debt funds or banks. We can go together to better fund these companies. And it does not have a closed mandate, so we are very flexible to adapt any casualties or any difficulties of the crisis of the cycle of life of the companies to adapt to the way of funding. Then we have the commitment. That means that crowd lending closes the circle, or better said, the triangle between investors, promoters, and the platform itself, because we are all really committed with each other. We are committed with the impact, but we are quite committed with the people that work in each side, the company, the investors, and the platform. And the third side, we have a transparency. The crowd lending is, I think, is the more democratic and transparent way to point funds towards the companies. And we share information in both sides to give clear information to everyone. And in the end, this goes in the idea of the community. It's very important to create a community, not in terms of idealistic way of doing things, but also it makes a better performance of the business itself. That means the flexibility helps you to adapt the product to the client, commitment to stay in the same line, investors and companies. Transparency helps to grow the commitment in everywhere, and you make in the end a better community to go to better projects, growing that projects, and make better rounds of funding in a long-term way of doing things. And finally, as a conclusion, I will say for this to work, the role of the platform is quite focused on developing all these characteristics, as I have told. Well, we are in charge as a platform to understand both groups of clients and fostering transparency, commitment, and flexibility. So we will create a healthy and growing community of investors and impact companies to make this sector better and more scalable in the future. So thank you very much, and this is the end of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Eduardo, Daniel, and Jose. Thank you all for this super interesting case and how you have structured this intervention. It was super clear. So again, thanks. I believe we have a couple of questions from the audience. I know we don't have not much time, so I would like you to be brief. But we have here a question from Raluca that is asking what are the impact metrics that Fondo Social is using for monitoring the social enterprises and its own impact as a platform.
Okay, let me take this one. Thanks for the question. And in fact, we believe that measuring the impact is key for our work, and is also key for the credibility of the sector in the future. We've all been exposed to phenomena like greenwashing, and we believe that the way to fight greenwashing is to be very clear on what we are doing, and that comes through measuring. So as you probably have been browsing onto in our website, you'll see there's a lot of reference to the Sustainable Development Goals, which we use as international language to refer on what kind of impact. It's we apply let's say standard is not very, they are not standard yet, but methodologies like, for instance, the theory of change, and we go through, we study the impact of each project on a specific base. So we don't apply a general methodology to each case, but we apply specific metrics to each startup. So we analyze what the inputs, output, outcome, and impact of each mission and activities are, and eventually, before publishing and financing our projects, we identify minimum 3 metrics, 3 KPIs of social impact. And in order, we cannot unfortunately compare apple with apple, so it always has a kind of subjective layer to compare a project about quality education with a project about reforestation, for instance. So the metrics that we apply to each project differ from each other, but we need them to be present in the business plan of each startup. We need to see their projection, and we will keep the entrepreneurs and the CEO accountable for to meet the targets of impact that they had in plan, and together with us, of course, our crowd investors.
Thank you very much for this answer. It was very clear. We will not have time to tackle all the questions, but I would like to have a last one before closing the webinar that is asking to Eduardo if the crowdlending platform is working and when we'll be able to invest in a crowdlending project.
Yes, hello Arnau. Well, the crowdlending platform is going to be ready at the end of September to both give loans and invest in them. No? So you will have to help to wait until the end of summer to show our first projects.
That's perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. Again, there are a couple more questions, but unfortunately, we don't have more time. So we might text you by email in case they are available to be responded by email. So I would like just to close this thanking you, of course. So the panel of speakers, Francesca, Jose, Daniele, Eduardo. I would like to invite you everyone to download the report. Here you have the link and the QR code. It's been a great session, knowing the example of Fondo Social, and also, of course, from the introduction with the ECN. Thanks also for responding to the questions of our attendees, and also, of course, thank you as well to our partners, the European Commission, Innovate UK, and Fund for Impact. So with this, I will close the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending this, and have a good evening. Thanks.